The groan of this hulk is a familiar liturgy. 10,000 years I have listened to the tortured canticles of dying starships, and this one sings the same hymn of decay. Its metal bones, fused by plasma and time into a single, agonizing entity, shriek with every minor correction from the void drives. It is a sound that burrows into the marrow, a constant reminder that we are adrift in a tomb, not a vessel of conquest. I sit here on the cold deck of a forgotten shrine, and I listen. I have little else to do. The long war has become a long, droning wait, punctuated by moments of mindless slaughter that change nothing. My armor, the black plate that was once the proud gray of the 16th, is a second skin now, its inner workings a mesh of biomechanical sinew and weeping circuitry fused to my own scarred flesh. Its spirit is as weary as my own, the hum of the power pack a tired, resentful sigh. They call me Malogust the Silent, not for any vow, but because I have found that words are a currency spent only on fools and liars, and I am surrounded by both. Down the corroded transitway, I can hear them. The Chosen of Abaddon, a laughable title. They are a rabble, a squabbling pack of hyenas fighting over the scraps of a lion's kill. A kill that happened 10 millennia ago. I hear the wet smack of augmented flesh on mutated hide, the guttural roars of things that barely remember the shape of a man. They fight over a weapon, a rationing unit, a perceived slight. Their devotion is a shallow, theatrical thing, a screaming piety to gods who view them as nothing more than motes of dust to be stirred by their cosmic whims. I see them, their armor warped into Baroque nightmares, horns of bone bursting through ceramite, flesh branded with the profane geometries of their patrons. They are not the warriors I knew. They are not the Sons of Horus. They are not even a respectable echo. They are a parody, a mockery of the legion we were. The legion that burned a galaxy in the name of one man. My perch is a desecrated imperial chapel, captured untold centuries ago, when this hulk consumed a Basilica-class cruiser. The air is thick with the scent of ozone from failing power conduits, and the cloying sweet stench of unholy incense, burned in rituals I no longer attend. Stained glass windows, shattered long ago, leave jagged, tooth-like shards in their frames, through which the impossible light of the Immaterium sometimes bleeds, casting shifting, nauseating patterns of purple and green across the floor. The statues of their corpse emperor's saints have been pulled down, their marble faces methodically smashed, their hands broken. In their place, our own kind has erected crude totems of scrap metal and bone, daubed with the 8-pointed star. It is a child's angry scrawling over a master's painting. There is no artistry in it, only spite. And spite, I understand. Spite is perhaps the only fuel I have left. I run a gauntleted finger over the arm of the broken throne I occupy. It was likely the seat of some preening cardinal. The velvet is long gone, rotted to dust, leaving only the cold iron frame. Here, in the relative quiet, the ghosts are loudest. They do not speak of the dark gods or of the glorious promise of chaos. My ghosts are older, more stubborn. I see the pale, toxic sun of Cthonia hanging in the smoggy sky. I feel the grit of the black sand under my boots. I remember the clang of blade on blade in the gang wars, the brutal meritocracy that forged us into the sharpest weapon the Imperium had ever known. We were killers, born in darkness, but we had a code. We had a brotherhood forged not in shared prayer, but in shared blood and victory. And above us all, there was Horus, not the twisted, soul-shattered demigod of the final days, screaming at the universe from the bridge of the vengeful spirit. No, my ghost is the War Master, the first Primarch, the brilliant, shining sun whose smile could sway worlds and whose fury could break them. The brother who knew every one of our names. That is the man I followed into damnation. And it is his memory that makes the present so unbearable. He promised us a new age, a galaxy of reason ruled by the strong, free from the dogma of terror, a secular truth. What a bitter jest that seems now. We traded one set of gilded lies for a multitude of howling, contradictory ones. We abandoned a silent, distant father for a pantheon of demanding, rapacious tyrants who grant power at the cost of the self. I look at my hand. The ceramite is pitted and scarred, but beneath it, the flesh is no longer entirely my own. It tingles with a life that is not mine. A low thrum of warp energy that has settled deep in my cells. A gift, they call it. A blessing from the gods. I call it a cage within a cage. My body is as much a prison as this armor, as this hulk, as this long, pointless war. My aimless gaze drifts across the filth-strewn floor of the shrine. Shattered tiles, spent shell casings, dried bloodstains black with age. The patterns are a mess, a collage of sacrilege and neglect. But my eyes, honed by centuries of seeking the flaw in the fortress wall, the weak point in the shield line, catch something. An incongruity. Beneath the layers of grime and defacement, near the base of what was once the main altar, the geometry is wrong. The mosaic tiles of the Imperials were ornate, full of curves and flourishes. But this section is different. The lines are cleaner, more severe. The tiles are thicker, hewn from a darker, basalt-like stone that seems to drink the faint light. There is no imperial eagle, no Gothic script. There is only a stark, brutalist precision that speaks to me on a level deeper than memory. It is the work of Legion artisans. Our work. From a time before such craftsmanship was forgotten. A cold spark, not of warp fire, but of pure, sharp curiosity, ignites in the hollow space where my soul used to be. I rise, the groan of my armor's joints echoing the groans of the hulk itself. Each step is heavy, deliberate. 10,000 years of weariness are in that short walk to the altar. I kneel, a gesture I have not made in earnest since I knelt before my Primarch. My gauntlet, a weapon that has crushed 1,000 skulls, moves with uncharacteristic gentleness as I scrape away the layers of filth. The grime is thick, almost fossilized. I use the edge of my combat knife to pry and chip at it, the screech of metal on stone setting my teeth on edge. Slowly, painstakingly, a shape is revealed. Not the 8-pointed star of chaos undivided. not the mark of any of the four. It is a single, unblinking eye. Simple, perfect, the eye of Horus. But it is not the leering serpentine eye of the Black Legion, the sigil of the arch-traitor. This is the old symbol, the symbol of the Luna Wolves before we were even the Sons of Horus, the mark of the War Master in his glory, the conqueror of 1,000 worlds, the Emperor's favored son. A tremor runs through me, a violent shudder that has nothing to do with the vibrations of the deck plates. This is not a trophy of war. This is not a desecrated piece of imperial history. This is a secret, our secret, hidden here in the belly of an enemy ship for millennia. My fingers trace the outline of the eye, feeling the precise cuts in the stone. There is a seam, almost invisible, running around the sigil. It is not decoration. It is a door, a vault, a relic of a past I thought was not only dead, but dismembered and scattered to the winds. And as my mind comprehends the impossible truth of what lies before me, a feeling I cannot name, a terrifying mixture of dread and a faint, agonizing flicker of something like hope, seizes the core of my being. For the first time in an age, the ghosts in my head fall silent, waiting to see what I will do. The pressure of my thumb on the central point of the eye was an act of faith I had not performed in 10 millennia. There was no prayer on my lips, no plea to any dark power. It was a purely mechanical motion, a question asked of the stone and steel. For a long moment, nothing. The silence in the desecrated shrine deepened, becoming a physical weight. The groaning of the hulk seemed to fade, as if the void itself was holding its breath. I felt a fool, an old sentimental fool chasing a ghost conjured by a trick of the light and a line of tile. Then, with a sound like a giant's sigh, a section of the floor around the mosaic began to descend. It was not the jarring crash of imperial mechanics, but a smooth, near-silent descent. The work of grav plates and master artisans who understood the virtue of subtlety. A wave of air, cold and sterile as a mortuary slab, washed over me, displacing the thick, cloying stench of the chapel. It smelled of nothing, of clean, recycled oxygen and the faint, crisp tang of ozone from powerful, well-maintained machinery. A scent I had not encountered since the hangars of the vengeful spirit, before the rot set in. The revealed stairway was narrow, hewn from the same black stone, each step a single perfect block. No light sources were visible, yet the passage glowed with a soft internal luminescence, the stone itself seeming to radiate a cool white light. It was the light of the Ulanor triumph, the light of our glory days. It did not flicker or writhe like the warp light I had grown accustomed to. It was steady, calm, and utterly absolute. My descent was slow, the maglocks in my sabatons clanking on the stone with a sound that felt like sacrilege. I was a thing of filth and corruption entering a sacred space. Every scar on my armor, every blasphemous rune carved by madmen in the eye of terror, felt like a screaming brand of my unworthiness. The air grew colder, cleaner, and with it, a pressure built in my mind. Not the crushing, insane pressure of a demon's presence, but the precise, ordered pressure of a powerful, dormant machine spirit. one that had slept for an age and was only now beginning to stir. I felt its cogitators whir to life, its logic engines running diagnostic queries on my presence, my armor, my biosignature. It recognized me. It recognized the 16th Legion markers embedded in my warplate's core programming. It recognized the faint, degraded Chthonian markers in my own blood. And it granted me passage. The staircase opened into a chamber that defied the logic of the hulk that contained it. It was a perfect hexagon of polished obsidian and gleaming steel, untouched by rust or decay. The air was held in a stasis field so powerful I could feel it prickle against the exposed cabling on my arms. This was not a vault. It was a gene laboratory, a reliquary of breathtaking scale and perfection. Along 5 of the 6 walls, from floor to ceiling, were racks of cryostasis containers, each no larger than a human heart. They were arranged with military precision, hundreds upon hundreds of them, each glowing with a faint amber light from within. My voximeter clicked with a dry, static hiss as I tried to form a word. Here, slumbering in the cold, was the future we had squandered, the legacy we had pissed away in a fit of pique. The pure, unblemished gene seed of the Sons of Horus. Not just any samples. A dat slate, resting on a central plinth and still humming with latent power, confirmed the impossible. Its screen flickered to life as my gauntlet neared, displaying crisp, clear Chthonian runes. Progenoid glands, post-Ulanor, pre-Istvan. This was the Legion at its zenith, the genetic inheritance of the greatest conquerors the galaxy had ever known, harvested before the first whisper of chaos, before the lodges, before Davin, before the betrayal, before the fall. I reached out, my trembling fingers tracing the frosted plasteel of one of the containers. Inside, suspended in shimmering cryofluid, was the promise of a legionary, a true son of Horus. I could see him in my mind's eye, tall and proud in moon-gray ceramite, the single eye of Cthonia glaring from his pauldron. A warrior of discipline and unmatched skill, his mind a razor of tactical genius, his loyalty absolute, his brotherhood unbreakable. I could take this. I could take this treasure and begin again. We could find a world, a dead moon in some forgotten corner of the galaxy, and build. We could raise a new generation, untainted by the long war, unsullied by the promises of the ruinous powers. We could teach them the art of war as the War Master taught us, not the frothing bloodlust of Khorne's berserkers or the putrid endurance of Nurgle's plague-ridden slugs. We would be a legion again, an army. Not this traveling circus of freaks, monstrosities, and squabbling warlords that Abaddon called the Black Legion. We could reclaim our name. We could finish what we started, not for the gods, not for revenge, but for the secular truth Horus once promised us. A galaxy for humanity, ruled by its strongest, most worthy sons. The vision was so clear, so potent, It felt more real than the rusted deck plates above my head. It was a draught of pure, cold water to a man who had been drinking poison for 10,000 years. But then, the poison answered back. The warp taint in my own blood, the gifts I had been given to survive this long, agonizing existence, recoiled from the purity of the chamber. A bitter, hateful laugh bubbled up from my chest, a rasping, ugly sound in the pristine silence. Who was I to be the genesis of such a thing? I, Malogust, whose soul was a shriveled, blackened husk, whose body was a canvas of mutation and profane augmentation. I looked at my reflection in the polished black wall. I saw the monstrous horned silhouette of my armor. I saw the faint, sickly light that leaked from the joints of my helmet, the mark of some minor demonic possession I'd picked up in the crone worlds and never quite shaken. I would be their father, their mentor? I would tell them of the glorious War Master, and they would look upon me and see the lie. They would see what his path truly led to. This, a monster in a can, haunting the ruins of a dead dream. And what of them? These pure, new sons. We would raise them in secret, shield them from the truth. But the galaxy is not as it was. The eye of terror bleeds into reality. The whispers of the gods are not confined to cursed temples and forgotten worlds. They are everywhere. They are a background radiation that permeates all of existence. How long would these new suns remain pure? A week? A year? A century? Before the first one would hear the promises of Slaanesh in the perfection of his swordsmanship. Before another felt the liberating rage of Khorne in the heat of battle. Before a third saw the cold, inevitable logic in Nurgle's cycles of decay and rebirth. Before the most ambitious among them sought the arcane power of Tzeentch to outwit his brothers. The fall was inevitable. It was written into our very being. Horus himself, the brightest of us all, could not resist it. What chance would these mere copies have? To create them would not be an act of rebirth. It would be an act of ultimate cruelty. I would be breeding them for the slaughter, damning them to a fate I would not wish on my most hated foe. I would be setting up the pieces for the same tragedy all over again. The alternative was simple. A single plasma grenade, vented. The archaeotech power core of this chamber, breached. It would all turn to superheated vapor and sterile ash in a heartbeat. An instant of fire and light, and the dream would be dead forever. It would be a mercy, an admission of failure, a final, definitive statement that the Sons of Horus died at Terra, and everything since has been nothing but the twitching of a corpse. The thought was liberating in its nihilism. To destroy it would be to betray the last lingering shred of hope. But it would also be an act of honesty, a final, bitter truth. There is no going back. There is no redemption. There is only the long war and the damnation we chose. To obliterate this gene seed would be my ultimate and perhaps only act of loyalty to the brothers I lost. A final severing of the thread, so their memory could never be desecrated by a pale, failed imitation. My hand went to my belt, my fingers brushing against the cold casing of a plasma grenade. It would be so easy. In the days that followed, the shrine became my fortress and my prison. I sealed the main entrance, piling rubble and smashed statuary against the great doors, leaving only a small, easily defended passage for myself. I spent my time below in the cold, silent purity of the gene vault. I did not eat. I did not cycle my armor's nutrient reserves. The hunger I felt was of a different kind. I patrolled the hexagonal chamber endlessly, my heavy footsteps the only sound. I would run diagnostic checks on the stasis units, my technical knowledge buried for millennia beneath layers of rage and despair, slowly returning. I maintained the sanctum. I guarded it. From whom, I wasn't sure. The greatest threat was my own indecision. The others began to notice my absence. I heard them outside the shrine, their guttural voices and clanking war gear, a constant intrusion. One of them, a hulking brute named Vorlag, whose flesh had merged with his Terminator plate in a mess of weeping boils and stretched sinew, tried to force the doors.
Malogust, the despoiler summons the warband. We make for the engine rooms. More blood for the gods, old one. His voice was a wet, bubbling roar, filtered through a vox grill clogged with phlegm. I stood at the top of the luminescent stairs, listening, my hand on the hilt of my power sword. I did not answer. His bellowing was followed by the thunderous boom of his power fist against the makeshift barricade. The stones held. After a few more angry roars and a string of curses directed at my obstinance and age, he left. They all left. I heard the sounds of battle echo through the hulk for a day cycle, the distant chatter of bolters, the shriek of chainswords, the crump of explosions. I remained in my sanctuary. The war outside meant nothing. The only war that mattered was the one being waged inside me, in the silent, sterile cold. The longer I spent in proximity to the vault, the more I began to change. The constant hum of the pure stasis fields seemed to resonate with my biology, a stark contrast to the chaotic energies that had suffused me for so long. The faint, sickly light in my armor joints dimmed. The low thrum of warp energy in my cells quieted, replaced by a strange, aching emptiness. It was like an addict being denied his fix. My mind, too, felt the shift. The maddening whispers of the warp, the constant background noise of my damnation began to recede. In their place, something else rose from the depths of my memory. I started to hear echoes, the crisp snap hiss of a vox channel opening, the calm, assured voice of Captain Abaddon, the real Abaddon before his fall, issuing firing solutions. I heard the roar of a crowd on a conquered world, chanting Horus's name. I heard the War Master himself, not screaming in warp-fueled madness, but speaking with quiet confidence to his Mournival, his voice a balm of pure, unshakable charisma. These were not ghosts. They were memories, sharp and clear as if they had happened yesterday. The War Master's echo was not just in the gene seed. It was a psychic resonance, a lingering fragment of our Legion's soul. And it was waking up inside me. It scoured me, cleansed me, and in doing so it isolated me completely from the man I had become, and from the rabble I served alongside. I was no longer just Malogust the Silent. I was becoming a relic, a living fossil of a dead and buried age.
the sole guardian of a future that must never be, and a past that could never be reclaimed. And I did not know which was the greater curse. The silence ended not with a whisper, but with the shriek of tortured metal. Above, the barricade I had so painstakingly erected disintegrated in a shower of stone dust and twisted plasteel. The sound was a violation, a brutish, slobbering intrusion into the hallowed quiet I had come to cherish. They had returned. The war for the engine rooms was over, and the hyenas had come back to their den, sniffing for weakness, for anything they had missed. I stood at the base of the luminescent stairs, my hand resting on the cool, humming plinth in the center of the vault. The echoes in my mind were sharper now, no longer fragmented whispers but entire conversations. I heard the tactical discourse of the Mournival, the dry wit of little Horus Aximand, the earnest loyalty of Garvey Alokan before everything. The purity of this place had not just scoured the warp from my flesh. It had peeled back the calloused layers of 10,000 years of hate, revealing the raw nerve of who I once was. And that nerve screamed at the sound of their approach. "Malogust, you old fossil, your time hiding is done." It was Vorlag's voice, a wet, bubbling bellow that promised violence. Heavy, stomping footfalls followed, the discordant clang of ill-maintained Terminator plate on the desecrated shrine floor. They were not alone. I could hear the chittering laughter of lesser beasts, the newly mutated and the freshly damned, all eager for a taste of whatever prize their champion might claim. I did not move. I waited. Let them come. Let them see. I drew my power sword, the weapon that had served me since the Great Crusade. The activation rune flared, and a low, hungry hum filled the air of the vault, a clean and perfect sound that harmonized with the thrum of the stasis fields. It was the sound of righteous war, not of rabid slaughter. Slowly, deliberately, I began to ascend the stairs, each step a final judgment. When my helmet crested the top of the stairwell, I saw them. Vorlag stood foremost, his armor a cancerous mockery of the cataphractii pattern, one arm ending in a snarling demon maul that dripped oily ichor. Behind him, a handful of others, their forms twisted into pathetic parodies of Astartes, their eyes glowing with the borrowed light of their patrons. They recoiled from the entrance to the vault, not in fear, but in avaricious wonder. They saw the clean, white light and smelled the untainted power, and their grasping souls yearned to defile it. "By the throne of skulls," Vorlag breathed, his voice thick with lust. "What is this? What have you been hoarding down here, old man?" He took a step forward, his maul scraping a groove into the floor tiles. "Some archaeotech prize? A weapon? It belongs to the despoiler. It belongs to the Legion." A dry, rasping sound escaped my vox grill. It took me a moment to realize it was my own laughter. "Legion," I said, and my voice was not the broken rasp they knew. It was clearer, colder. It was the voice of a Chthonian gang lord, the voice of a veteran of the 16. It held the weight of a name they had forgotten. "You dare use that word? You are not a legion. You are a plague. A festering wound upon a memory you are not worthy to speak." Vorlag's mutated face contorted with rage.
Words! Always your useless words, Silent One. We bleed for the cause. We give our souls for power. What do? Brood in the shadows and dream of a past that is dead?
It is not dead, I said, my voice as cold and absolute as the void. I raised my power sword, its tip aimed at his bloated throat. It is sleeping, and I am its guardian. You are the nightmare from which it must be protected. My gaze swept over the others, their bestial faces a gallery of our failure. Look at yourselves. You beg for scraps from the tables of gods who despise you. You trade your strength for mutation, your discipline for madness. The War Master sought to free humanity from tyranny, and you have enslaved yourselves to something infinitely worse. You are not his sons. You are his eternal shame. The truth of my words was a physical blow. They hissed and roared, but for a moment, they did not advance. I had spoken a blasphemy far greater than denying their gods. I had denied their very identity, the lie they had told themselves for 10 millennia. Vorlag was the first to recover, his rage overriding his confusion.
I will silence you for good, he roared and charged.
He was a mountain of corrupted ceramite and demonic flesh, a force of pure mindless aggression. In ages past I would have met his charge with equal fury, but the clarity of this place had given me back more than memory. It had given me back my discipline. I did not meet his clumsy overhead swing. I stepped inside his reach, the move of a Chthonian duelist, not a berserker. My power sword slid along the haft of his maul, shedding crackling sparks. With a turn of my wrist, I drove the blade's pommel into the weak joint of his elbow, shattering ceramite and bone. He bellowed in pain, his maul falling from a suddenly useless hand.
Before he could bring his other weapon to bear, my sword was already moving, an upward arc of blue energy that clove through his gorget, through vat-grown flesh and corrupted organs, and burst from the top of his helmet in a shower of gore and vaporized machine oil. He stood there for a second, a monument to his own stupidity, before collapsing backward with the sound of a falling manufactorum. The others were stunned into inaction for a heartbeat. I used it. I lunged forward, out of the stairwell, my bolter spitting death. One warrior, whose face was a mass of tentacles, fell with 3 precise shots to the chest. Another, who ran on digitigrade legs, was cut almost in 2 by a sweeping slash of my sword. They were not soldiers. They were animals. But they were many, and I was one. They swarmed me, their chain axes chewing at my warplate, their talons screeching on my pauldrons. I was being borne back, pushed toward the precipice of the glowing stairs, my strength finally beginning to fail. The weight of 10,000 years was returning, a crushing tide of exhaustion. I could not save the past. I could not create a new future. But I could grant a final, merciful death. My hand went to my belt, my fingers closing around the cold, familiar shape of a plasma grenade. I saw it all, with perfect, terrible clarity. The dream of a new legion, pure and strong, rising from these ashes. And I saw the inevitable outcome, their pride, their strength, their ambition, turning them into the very monsters I now fought. The cycle would repeat,
The fall was our nature. Horus fell. I fell. They would fall. There will be no more sons, I grunted, the words torn from me by the effort of holding them back. With the last of my strength, I shoved the creatures away from me, creating a single moment of space. I did not throw the grenade at them. I looked down into the pristine, perfect vault. I saw the ranks of glowing cryo-containers, a silent army of ghosts, a future that could never be. It was the most beautiful and the most poisonous thing I had ever seen. There will be only an ending. With a final prayer to a man, not a god, I armed the grenade and tossed it down the stairs. It landed on the central plinth, a tiny dark object in a sea of cool white light. The remaining warriors stared at me, their bestial minds not comprehending the totality of my surrender, the scale of my final act of defiance. My defiance was not against them. It was against fate itself. The last thought in my mind was not of the coming fire. It was of the Ulanor triumph. I saw the War Master, bathed in golden light, his smile genuine and proud. He was looking at his sons, his perfect, victorious sons. And for a fleeting, impossible instant, I was one of them again, whole, triumphant, true. Then the vault's archaeotech core, breached by the grenade's fury, went critical. The cool white light of the past turned into the incandescent, star-hot furnace of oblivion. It was not a roar of warp fire, tainted and screaming. It was a pure, clean, silent detonation of absolute erasure. The light washed up the stairs, and in its holy, unforgiving glare, the corrupted forms of my former brothers were unmade. Their mutations burned away, their souls scoured clean before being annihilated. I did not scream. I did not even close my eyes. I faced the light, the final and only absolution. The weight of my name, the burden of 10,000 years of failure, was consumed. The log ends here. There is only silence. There is only light.